My name is Emily Parker. I am 34 years old. I work 12-hour night shifts as an emergency room nurse at Memorial Health University Medical Center in Savannah, Georgia. Every shift reminds me how quickly life can change. One careless decision, one missed heartbeat, one phone call in the middle of the night. I've spent my career helping people survive the worst days of their lives. I never imagined one of mine would begin the moment I unlocked the front door of the house my grandfather left me. 3 months ago, my grandfather Walter Parker passed away after a short battle with heart failure. He left me something far more valuable than money: his riverfront home on the outskirts of Savannah. It wasn't extravagant. It was an old two-story house with weathered white siding, a wraparound porch, and a detached workshop where he'd spent 40 years restoring fishing boats and building furniture. To most people, it looked like another aging Southern home. To me, it was every happy memory I still had. Grandpa always said the house wasn't built with lumber. It was built with promises. I didn't understand what he meant when I was a child. I do now. After his funeral, I couldn't bring myself to move in immediately. Working 12-hour overnight shifts meant I barely had time to sleep in my apartment downtown, much less renovate an old house that needed electrical work, plumbing repairs, and a new roof. So I visited every weekend, checked the mail, watered Grandpa's garden, opened the windows to let fresh air inside, slowly planned the renovations. About a month after inheriting the house, one of my closest friends, Daniel Brooks, came by to help install a smart home security system. Daniel worked in digital security. He trusted technology more than luck. "You're going to own an empty property for a while," he told me as he mounted another camera beneath the porch roof. "Empty houses attract attention. I don't think anyone even notices this place." Daniel smiled without looking up. "They don't have to. One person is enough." By sunset, he'd installed cameras covering every angle: the front porch, the driveway, the backyard, the detached garage, the side gate, a smart video doorbell. Everything backed up automatically to encrypted cloud storage. As he packed his tools, he pointed toward the tiny camera above the garage. "Remember one thing. If someone blocks one camera, another camera usually sees them doing it." I laughed. "I hope these things spend the next 10 years recording squirrels." Daniel grinned. "I hope so too." Then he looked back at the house. "But if something ever goes wrong, they won't forget." At the time, I thought he was being overly cautious. I had no idea those cameras would soon become the only witnesses I could trust. 2 weeks later, I worked one of the hardest shifts of my career. A multi-vehicle accident on Interstate 95 filled our emergency department before midnight. By 4 in the morning, we'd treated broken bones, internal bleeding, and a young father whose heart stopped twice before we finally stabilized him. When my shift ended 14 hours after it began, I could barely keep my eyes open. Instead of driving straight home, I decided to stop by Grandpa's house. The flooring contractor was supposed to begin measuring rooms the following week, and I wanted to double-check a few things before handing over the keys. The drive took almost 40 minutes. As I turned onto the quiet road leading toward the river, something immediately felt wrong. There were cars in the driveway, not one, 3. A pickup truck, a silver SUV, a moving van. I frowned. Maybe the contractor had arrived early. Maybe Daniel forgot to tell me someone was checking the property. Then I noticed children's bicycles leaning against the front porch. That definitely wasn't right. I parked across the street and stared through the windshield. The porch swing Grandpa built 20 years earlier was gone. Flower pots I'd arranged the previous weekend had been moved to one side. Curtains I had never seen before hung in the front windows. It looked occupied. I quickly opened the security app on my phone. Every camera showed a live feed. Nothing appeared damaged. The system hadn't been hacked. The front door camera showed people walking in and out carrying laundry baskets and grocery bags as though they'd lived there for months. My pulse quickened. Using my phone, I rewound the cloud recordings. 3 days, then 5. Boxes arriving, furniture being unloaded, children running through the yard, someone removing Grandpa's old mailbox and replacing it with a new one. They hadn't broken in overnight. They had been moving in piece by piece. While I was working overnight shifts, saving strangers' lives, I got out of my car and walked toward the front porch. The front door wasn't locked. Music drifted softly from inside. Someone laughed in the kitchen. I stepped through the doorway. Grandpa's old leather recliner had been shoved against a wall. A massive gray sectional sofa now filled the living room. Family photographs I had never seen lined the fireplace. A colorful sign hung above the hallway. Home is where family belongs. Then a little girl, maybe 7 years old, ran down the stairs holding a stuffed rabbit. She stopped the instant she saw me. Confused, she turned toward the kitchen. "Dad, the lady's here." Not Aunt Emily, not the owner, just the lady. A second later, my older brother Ryan walked into the living room carrying Grandpa's favorite coffee mug. The same chipped blue mug he'd used every morning for almost 25 years. Ryan looked around as if he'd simply bumped into an unexpected visitor. Then he smiled, a calm, comfortable, almost amused smile. "Emily." He lifted the mug slightly. "You finally made it." I stared at him. "What are you doing in my house?" He looked genuinely puzzled by the question. "You weren't living here." "So?" He casually gestured around the room. "We fixed that." For several seconds, I couldn't speak. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't grief making people irrational. This was occupation. Deliberate, planned, calculated. Ryan took another sip of coffee. "You work nights?" The place was sitting empty. My kids needed somewhere stable. So we moved in, as though he were explaining why he'd borrowed a lawnmower, not stolen someone's home. I slowly reached into my pocket and wrapped my hand around my phone. Ryan noticed. His smile grew even wider. "You can call whoever you want." He leaned casually against Grandpa's bookshelf. "By the time they get here, this whole neighborhood will think this has been our home all along." He believed appearances were enough. He believed moving furniture, changing curtains, and putting children's toys in the yard would somehow erase my ownership. What he didn't know was that while he'd been busy making the house look like his, 9 different cameras had quietly been recording every trip, every moving truck, every covered license plate, and every box carried through that front door. And before this was over, those cameras were going to tell a story Ryan never realized he had written himself. Ryan wasn't always a stranger. When we were children, he was simply my older brother, 3 years older, louder, more confident, the kind of kid who could charm adults 5 minutes after getting into trouble. I admired him once, at least until I became old enough to notice that every family rule somehow bent around him. If Ryan forgot to do his chores, Mom said he was overwhelmed. If I forgot mine, I needed to be more responsible. If Ryan borrowed money, he deserved another chance. If I asked for help buying nursing textbooks, I should learn to be independent. Grandpa Walter saw it long before I did. One afternoon when I was about 12, we were repairing an old fishing dock together. Ryan had promised to help. Instead, he disappeared with friends after lunch. I remember complaining. "Why does he always get away with everything?" Grandpa kept hammering another board into place before answering. "Because some people confuse love with rescuing." I looked at him. "I don't understand." He smiled gently. "Helping someone after they've fallen is kindness. Catching them every time they refuse to stand up is how you teach them they'll never have to." At the time, I thought he was talking about chores. Years later, I realized he was talking about my brother's entire life. Ryan rarely finished what he started. He changed careers every couple of years, started businesses that disappeared within months, borrowed money with complete confidence that someone else would eventually solve the problem. And someone usually did. Mom, Grandpa, sometimes both. Grandpa never hated Ryan. He simply believed accountability was another form of love. One day he told me, while teaching me how to rebuild an old boat engine, "People stop growing the moment everyone around them starts making excuses." I never forgot that sentence. Maybe because I watched it come true. When Grandpa's health began declining, Ryan visited more often, not to help, to talk about the property. The land alone has to be worth a fortune. We should probably sell while the market's hot. Grandpa would always shake his head. This house isn't for sale. Ryan laughed every time. Everything's for sale. Grandpa never argued. He simply looked at him with quiet disappointment. About a month before he passed away, Grandpa asked me to meet him on the back porch. The river was unusually calm that evening. He handed me a small envelope. Inside was a second set of house keys. I want you to keep these. I already have one. I know. These are different. They open everything, including the workshop, the attic, the document cabinet in my office. I frowned. Why are you giving them to me now? He looked across the water before answering. Because promises don't protect themselves. Then he placed his weathered hand over mine. Emily, property isn't about money. It's about trust. If someone ever asks you to surrender either one, don't. Those were some of the last serious words he ever said to me. 2 weeks later, he was gone. The will reading happened 5 days after the funeral. Everything was exactly as Grandpa had arranged. I inherited the house outright. Ryan inherited nearly $300,000 from Grandpa's investment account, his restored pickup truck, every tool inside the workshop, and Grandpa's fishing boat. It wasn't unequal. It was simply different. Ryan didn't say much during the meeting, but I noticed the way he stared at the deed resting in front of me. Not angry, calculating. Mom broke the silence first. I honestly thought Walter would have divided the house. The attorney calmly replied, Mr. Parker was very specific. There are no shared ownership provisions. Ryan smiled politely. No problem. We'll figure something out. The words sounded harmless. Looking back, I think that was the exact moment he began planning. The weeks after Grandpa's funeral were emotionally exhausting. Working overnight shifts left me too drained to deal with contractors during the day. So every Saturday morning I'd drive out to the house with a notebook full of renovation plans. The roof needed replacing. The electrical panel was outdated. The workshop roof leaked whenever it rained. There was plenty to do. One Saturday, Daniel Brooks stopped by carrying several large equipment cases. You finally ready? As ready as I'll ever be. For nearly 6 hours, we transformed Grandpa's quiet old house into one of the most secure homes on the street. Daniel wasn't interested in simple security. He believed in evidence. The first camera overlooked the front porch. The second covered the driveway. A third watched the detached garage. Then came cameras covering the backyard, both side gates, and every entrance. Finally, he installed a smart doorbell with facial recognition. I looked around the property. That's a lot of cameras. Daniel grinned. I'm not finished. He pointed across the street. See that blue house? Mrs. Henderson, the retired school principal, stepped onto her porch carrying lemonade. She waved cheerfully. Daniel waved back. We already talked. You talked? He nodded. She agreed to activate neighbor share. I raised an eyebrow. What's that? If your cameras ever miss something. Hers can help fill the timeline. He showed me the neighborhood security network. Several nearby homeowners voluntarily shared exterior footage with each other whenever crimes occurred. Driveways, street intersections, sidewalks. Every recording remained private unless permission was granted. It created something Daniel called overlapping visibility. No blind spots, he smiled. If someone blocks your front camera, another camera across the street usually records them doing it. I laughed. You're paranoid. I prefer prepared. After connecting the final camera above Grandpa's workshop, Daniel opened the security app. Colored icons appeared across the property. 9 active cameras, cloud backup, motion alerts, vehicle recognition, continuous recording. Everything synchronized to the exact second. He handed me my phone. Watch. Daniel walked toward the front gate. The app immediately displayed 3 different camera angles following him automatically. Then he stepped behind the garage. Another camera picked him up. He climbed into his truck. Mrs. Henderson's driveway camera continued tracking his vehicle until it disappeared around the corner. Daniel smiled. See, you'd have to disappear from the entire neighborhood before you disappeared from the timeline. I shook my head. I don't think anyone's ever going to need all this. He looked back at Grandpa's house for a long moment. You'd be surprised. People do strange things when property and family become part of the same sentence. At the time, I thought he was talking in general. I didn't realize he had just perfectly described my brother. The police arrived less than 15 minutes after I made the call. 2 patrol cars pulled quietly into the driveway. Red and blue lights reflected across Grandpa's front porch. Ryan folded his arms as though he had been expecting this all along. His wife immediately gathered the children behind her. Mom stepped forward before either officer could speak. Officers, this is just a family misunderstanding. The older officer looked at me. Who owns the property? Without saying a word, I handed him the deed, the probate paperwork, my driver's license, every document Grandpa's attorney had told me to keep together. Ryan interrupted before the officer could finish reading. I have permission. From who? Our mother. The officer calmly turned toward Mom. Ma'am, are you listed on the deed? She hesitated. No. Then you cannot authorize anyone to occupy this property. Ryan's confidence faded slightly. We're family. The officer nodded politely. And she's the legal owner. Family doesn't change property law. For the next 20 minutes, officers supervised while Ryan carried several essentials back to the moving truck. Clothes, medicine, children's backpacks, nothing else. The furniture remained exactly where it sat. This doesn't end here, Ryan whispered as he walked past me carrying a suitcase. It already did, I answered quietly. You just haven't realized it yet. The officers advised me to change every lock immediately. They also recommended documenting everything inside the house before moving a single object. Once everyone finally left, silence returned. I slowly walked from room to room. Grandpa's framed military photographs had been removed from the hallway. Boxes marked master bedroom sat beside my grandmother's cedar chest. Someone had replaced the mailbox outside with one displaying Parker family. The bold black letters made my stomach tighten. This hadn't been an emotional decision. It had been organized, deliberate, professional. Ryan hadn't moved into my house. He had been preparing people to believe it already belonged to him. The following morning, I called my closest friend, Olivia Reed. We met during college before she became one of Savannah's most respected real estate attorneys. She arrived carrying coffee, 2 legal pads, and an expression that immediately told me she already suspected this was much bigger than trespassing. She spent almost an hour walking through the house, taking photographs, examining locks, checking documents. Then she looked at me. Emily, this isn't about someone wanting a place to live. It's about someone wanting legal leverage. She asked a question I hadn't even considered. Have you checked the county records? I frowned. No. Let's do that. Within 30 minutes, we were sitting in her office searching public property filings. The deed from Grandpa's estate appeared exactly as expected. My name, clear title, no liens. Then Olivia stopped scrolling. Wait! Another filing appeared beneath the deed. Pending review. Property ownership adjustment. The owner listed Emily Parker. The transferee, Ryan Parker. I felt my pulse quicken. I never filed that. Olivia opened the document. There it was. My signature. Or something pretending to be it. At first glance it looked convincing, until she pointed toward the final line. See this? I nodded. I always sign Emily A. Parker. Exactly. This signature doesn't include your middle initial. She zoomed in further. The handwriting pressure is wrong. The angle changes halfway through. She leaned back. This isn't just forged. It was practiced. I stared at the screen. Ryan hadn't simply moved into my house. He had already started trying to transfer ownership. This just became a criminal matter. The next several days moved faster than I could process. Olivia contacted the county recorder's office, requested an immediate fraud review, placed a temporary alert on the property title. Then she asked me to gather every financial record Grandpa had left behind. His office remained untouched since the funeral. Inside the bottom drawer of his old oak desk sat several neatly labeled binders: insurance, taxes, property maintenance, loan records. Grandpa documented everything. Near the back of one binder, we found something unexpected. A folder labeled simply Ryan. Inside were handwritten notes spanning almost 8 years, personal loans, credit card payments, truck repairs, business investments, one entry after another, every amount carefully dated, every repayment column completely blank. The final total exceeded $380,000. Olivia quietly whistled. So that's why. Why what? Why your grandfather structured the estate this way. She turned another page. A handwritten note rested beneath the ledger. Ryan has confused generosity with ownership. Emily never has. The house belongs to the person who understands the difference. I swallowed hard. Grandpa had seen everything, long before anyone else. Just then my phone rang. Mom. Olivia nodded toward the speaker button. Answer. I did. Emily. Mom's voice sounded unusually gentle. Can we please stop fighting? I wasn't aware we had started. She sighed. Ryan's children are devastated. They thought they were finally moving into a permanent home. I closed my eyes. He told them the house was theirs. He was trying to give them stability. He was trying to steal my property. Silence. Then she quietly admitted something. There was an investor. Olivia immediately grabbed a pen. I continued carefully. What investor? A developer. They contacted Ryan months ago. My heartbeat quickened. Months. Yes. They wanted the property. Ryan said everyone would benefit. How much? Another pause. $1.6 million. The room became perfectly still. Ryan hadn't chosen Grandpa's house because his children needed bedrooms. He had chosen it because someone had already promised to buy it. Olivia slowly mouthed 3 words to me. Ask about paperwork. Mom. Did Ryan already sign something? She hesitated, then quietly answered. I think he created a company. Olivia's fingers immediately flew across her keyboard. Less than 60 seconds later, she found it. Parker River Holdings, LLC, created exactly 24 days before Ryan moved into my house. Registered mailing address. My grandfather's property. Olivia turned the screen toward me. Emily? I think your brother never intended to live there. She pointed toward the incorporation date. He intended to sell it. Suddenly, every piece fit together. Moving trucks, changing the mailbox, children sleeping in the bedrooms, establishing residency, forged ownership documents, a newly created LLC. It had never been about creating a home. It had been about creating the appearance that he already owned one. And somewhere, I had the feeling the security cameras surrounding Grandpa's house had quietly captured far more than we had watched so far. Olivia didn't want to confront Ryan immediately. That surprised me. If we already know about the forged documents, I asked, why not report everything today? She closed the county records on her laptop, because I don't think we've seen the whole plan. What do you mean? People who forge ownership documents rarely stop there. She looked directly at me. They usually leave a trail. So let's follow it. The next morning, Daniel arrived carrying 2 external hard drives and his laptop. I've downloaded every recording from your security system. How much footage? He smiled. Almost 2 weeks. I raised an eyebrow. 2 weeks. I figured we'd need context. For the next several hours, the 3 of us sat around Grandpa's old dining room table, watching synchronized footage from all 9 cameras. At first, nothing stood out. Mail deliveries, squirrels running across the backyard, a landscaper mowing the neighboring property. Then Daniel paused the timeline. Here. The timestamp showed 9 days before I discovered Ryan inside the house. The front door camera suddenly went black. I immediately recognized the moment. This is when someone covered it. Daniel nodded. Exactly. But keep watching. He switched to camera 3 overlooking the driveway. Ryan appeared carrying a folding ladder. He walked directly toward the front porch. The front camera went dark, but the driveway camera recorded him placing black tape over its lens. I laughed quietly. He covered one camera without realizing another camera was watching him do it. Daniel grinned. That's why overlapping coverage exists. He clicked forward. Ryan walked back to his truck, opened the passenger door, removed several cardboard boxes. The driveway camera couldn't see inside them, but the garage camera could. Another angle appeared. Ryan entered Grandpa's detached workshop carrying stacks of documents, large mailing envelopes, a portable printer, and something else, a small folding table. What is he doing? Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he skipped ahead another 30 minutes. Ryan returned carrying a wooden clipboard. He sat down alone inside the workshop, then removed several sheets of paper. Olivia leaned forward. Zoom. Daniel enlarged the image. Ryan picked up a pen, signed something, stopped, looked at another sheet, signed again, then again, and again. The same name, over and over. Emily Parker. My stomach turned. He was practicing. Daniel nodded. He repeated your signature 23 times. Nobody spoke. The workshop camera had captured everything. Ryan wasn't forging documents at the county office. He was rehearsing them inside Grandpa's workshop, the very room Grandpa had spent decades building furniture with his own hands. It somehow made the betrayal even worse. Daniel continued assembling the footage into one synchronized timeline. The software automatically aligned every camera by the exact second. Driveway, garage, front porch, backyard, doorbell, side gate, even Mrs. Henderson's security camera across the street. The result looked less like surveillance footage and more like a documentary. Every movement connected perfectly. At 10:14 a.m., Ryan arrived with empty boxes. At 10:18, he covered the front door camera. At 10:21, Mrs. Henderson's camera recorded a moving truck backing into the driveway. At 10:27, the garage camera showed Ryan unloading office equipment. At 10:34, he practiced my signature. At 11:02, the backyard camera recorded him removing Grandpa's original mailbox. At 11:11, the driveway camera captured him installing the new one displaying Parker family. At 11:18, the smart doorbell recorded Ryan testing his own house key several times before realizing he still needed Mom's copy. Olivia quietly shook her head. He wasn't moving. He was staging ownership. Daniel nodded. Exactly. He continued. The following day, another camera captured Ryan carrying framed family photographs into the living room. Not Grandpa's photographs, his own. Children's portraits, vacation pictures, wedding photographs. Everything carefully positioned. Olivia frowned. He's creating visual evidence. For who? A future buyer, a title inspector, a neighbor, anyone who might later say, "Of course Ryan lived there." Daniel skipped ahead once more. The neighborhood traffic camera obtained through a public records request showed a black SUV arriving 2 days later. A man in a business suit stepped out carrying a leather portfolio. He spent 15 minutes walking around the property with Ryan, then shook his hand before leaving. Olivia immediately recognized the logo on the visitor's briefcase. That's Blackwater Development. The developer, she nodded. They were already inspecting the property. My chest tightened. Ryan wasn't hoping to sell the house someday. He was already negotiating. The only thing preventing the sale was me. 3 evenings later, Ryan finally called. His tone sounded strangely cheerful. Emily, I think we've both overreacted. I don't, he laughed. What if we sit down like adults? I'm listening. I've prepared a compromise. Olivia motioned for me to keep him talking. What kind of compromise? You keep part of the money. What money? The sale. There it was. He had finally admitted it. I don't know what you're talking about, he sighed. Come on. We both know the property's worth over 1.5 million. We can still fix this. When? Sunday. At Grandpa's house. Bring the deed. I'll bring the paperwork. After hanging up, I looked toward Olivia. He thinks I'm negotiating, she smiled. Good. Let's keep it that way. Sunday afternoon arrived with clear skies and warm spring air. Ryan was already waiting on the front porch when we pulled into the driveway. He wasn't alone. Mom stood beside him. A thick folder rested under Ryan's arm. He smiled confidently as I stepped out of my car. I knew you'd come around. I came to listen. That's all I wanted. He opened the folder. Inside was a professionally prepared agreement. According to the document, I would transfer the property into Parker River Holdings LLC. In exchange, I would receive 35% of the proceeds after the future sale, minus administrative expenses, minus renovation costs, minus management fees, minus acquisition expenses. I almost laughed. By the time those deductions finished, there would be almost nothing left. Ryan slid a pen across the porch table. Sign here. Mom quietly added, Your grandfather would have wanted the family to stay together. I looked at both of them, then calmly reached into my bag. Instead of removing a pen, I placed 4 documents on the table: the forged property transfer, the LLC registration, the developer's inspection schedule, and finally, a series of enlarged photographs taken directly from Grandpa's workshop security camera. Ryan looked down. His face instantly lost all color. The photographs showed him sitting alone at Grandpa's workbench, practicing my signature over and over again. For the first time since this nightmare began, my brother had absolutely nothing to say, because no excuse in the world could explain away what 9 silent cameras had already watched him do. Ryan stared at the photographs for several long seconds. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again. They don't prove anything. Olivia calmly folded her hands. They prove quite a lot. Ryan immediately pointed at me. You've been spying on me. No, Daniel answered before I could. The security system was installed to protect Emily's property. You just happened to commit your crimes inside its field of view. Ryan laughed nervously. You can't seriously think a few security cameras are enough to accuse someone of forgery? Daniel smiled. A few. He reached into his briefcase and connected his laptop to the large television mounted above Grandpa's fireplace. I'd like to show you something. The screen came to life, a black background. Then a title appeared. Property Timeline Source, 9 Independent Camera Systems. Ryan's expression changed immediately. What is this? The complete story. Daniel clicked play. The first clip began 9 days before Ryan moved his family into the house. The driveway camera showed his pickup truck arriving. Timestamp verified. GPS verified. Cloud backup verified. Then the view shifted seamlessly to Mrs. Henderson's security camera across the street. The same truck, the same timestamp. No gaps, no edits. Next came the garage camera. Ryan unloading folding tables, boxes, office supplies, a portable printer. Olivia quietly looked toward the retired mediator who had agreed to supervise the voluntary settlement meeting. Please notice the timestamps. They are synchronized to the second, Daniel continued. The front door camera suddenly went black. Immediately, another camera angle appeared. The driveway camera showed Ryan climbing a ladder. Stretching black tape across the front camera lens, the mediator raised an eyebrow. So he intentionally disabled part of the security system. Daniel nodded. Only one part. The remaining cameras continued recording. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. I was protecting my privacy. Olivia answered calmly. Inside someone else's home. He said nothing. The timeline continued. Mrs. Henderson's camera captured the moving truck arriving. The traffic camera from the nearby intersection confirmed its route and arrival time. The backyard camera showed Ryan carrying mattresses through the rear entrance. The garage camera recorded him removing Grandpa's tools and stacking them against the wall. Every angle connected perfectly, minute by minute, second by second. The mediator quietly leaned forward. "I've never seen residential surveillance assembled like this." Daniel smiled. Neither has Ryan. Then came the clip everyone had been waiting for, the workshop. Ryan sitting alone at Grandpa's old wooden workbench. He carefully placed several blank sheets of paper in front of him, picked up a pen, then slowly wrote Emily Parker again, again, again. 23 separate attempts. Daniel zoomed closer. Each signature became more similar to mine. Ryan swallowed hard. He hesitated. "I was practicing." Olivia looked directly at him. "Practicing what?" Silence. The mediator looked down at the enlarged still photographs. "You've already submitted a property transfer containing your sister's forged signature." He turned another page. "And now we're watching you rehearse that signature several days beforehand." Ryan rubbed both hands across his face. "It looks bad." Olivia didn't respond. Daniel simply clicked play again. The final section of the timeline appeared. Ryan replacing Grandpa's mailbox. Installing one labeled Parker Family. Hanging family photographs above Grandpa's fireplace. Positioning children's bicycles in the front yard. Even directing his wife to move flower pots closer to the porch before stepping back to photograph the house. The mediator frowned. "Why photograph everything?" Daniel answered immediately. "To create visual evidence. For neighbors. For potential buyers. For anyone who later questioned occupancy." Ryan looked exhausted now. His confidence had completely disappeared, but he still made one final attempt. "This doesn't prove I intended to steal anything." Olivia calmly reached into another folder. "I was hoping you'd say that." She slid several printed emails across the table. Blackwater Development, Inspection Schedule, Letter of Intent. Parker River Holdings, LLC, listed as the anticipated seller. The mediator slowly adjusted his glasses. "This inspection occurred." He checked the date. "4 days before you physically moved into the property." Ryan said nothing. Olivia continued. "So let's review." She counted each point deliberately. "You formed an LLC. You forged Emily's signature. You disabled security cameras. You rehearsed the forged signature. You staged occupancy. You invited a developer to inspect property you did not own." She paused. "Can you explain which part of that sounds accidental?" No answer came, not from Ryan, not from Mom. The room remained completely silent. Finally, the mediator closed the folder in front of him. "I've mediated property disputes for 22 years. He looked directly at Ryan. "This is not a property dispute. This is a carefully planned attempt to obtain real estate through fraudulent documentation and manufactured occupancy." Ryan slowly lowered his head. For the first time since Grandpa died, he had run out of explanations, because every excuse he tried to invent had already been disproven by another camera. Every missing angle had been supplied by a different one. Every timeline overlapped perfectly. He had spent weeks creating the illusion that the house belonged to him. Daniel had just spent 30 minutes proving that the truth had been recording him from every possible angle all along. The formal hearing took place 6 weeks later at the Chatham County Courthouse. By then, Ryan had changed his story 3 different times. First, he said Grandpa had verbally promised him the house. Then he said our mother had misunderstood the will. Finally, when the forged signature became impossible to ignore, he claimed the whole thing had been an innocent attempt to correct an unfair estate distribution. His attorney called it a family misunderstanding. Olivia called it what it was: fraud. The courtroom was quiet when Daniel took the stand. He explained the smart security system, the cloud backups, the neighbor share footage, the driveway camera, the garage camera, and the traffic camera from the road near Grandpa's house. Then he played the synchronized timeline, Ryan arriving, Ryan covering the front camera, Ryan unloading boxes, Ryan replacing the mailbox, Ryan moving his furniture inside, Ryan meeting with the developer, and finally, Ryan sitting alone in Grandpa's workshop practicing my signature over and over again, 23 times. The judge didn't interrupt once. When the footage ended, Olivia called the notary. The notary testified that her stamp had been copied from an unrelated document and that she had never notarized any transfer involving me or Ryan. Then the developer's representative testified. He confirmed Ryan had presented himself as the authorized seller through Parker River Holdings, LLC. He also confirmed the proposed sale price, $1.6 million. By the time Olivia finished, Ryan looked like a man watching the walls close in. The judge reviewed the documents in silence. Then she looked directly at Ryan. This was not confusion, she said. This was a coordinated attempt to manufacture ownership. Her ruling was immediate. The fraudulent transfer was voided. Parker River Holdings was barred from making any claim against the property. Ryan was ordered to pay my legal fees. The court also referred the matter for criminal review on suspected forgery, attempted property fraud, and filing false documents. My mother cried. Ryan stared at the table. I felt nothing dramatic, no triumph, no revenge, only relief, because Grandpa's house was finally safe. And so was the promise he had trusted me to protect. 2 years later, the house looked alive again. The porch had been repaired. The green shutters were freshly painted. Grandpa's Navy photo was back in the entryway. His workshop had become something new. I named it Walter Parker Recovery House. It was a quiet weekend retreat for nurses, doctors, EMTs, and hospital staff who needed rest after brutal shifts. Nothing fancy. Clean sheets, coffee, a porch chair, a river view, and silence. The first nurse who stayed there cried on the back steps at sunrise and said, "This place feels safe." That was when I knew I had done the right thing. Ryan never went to prison, but he lost his job, his developer deal, and most of the family sympathy he had counted on. My mother and I barely spoke. When she finally sent a message saying she hoped I understood why she was scared, I replied, "I understand fear. I don't accept betrayal." That was all. One afternoon, a local reporter came to interview me about the recovery house. She asked, "What saved this place?" I looked toward the small camera above the porch, then toward the workshop Grandpa had built with his own hands. It wasn't luck, I said. It was the truth recorded from every possible angle. The reporter smiled. I looked back at the house. People think cameras protect property. I paused. But sometimes they protect promises made by people who are no longer here to defend themselves. And that was what Grandpa had really left me. Not just a house, not just land, but the courage to say no when people tried to turn love into leverage, and the wisdom to know that real family never needs your silence in order to survive the truth.
What this story teaches us is that betrayal does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it walks through the front door holding a coffee mug, smiling like it belongs there. Emily's story is not only about a house, it is about boundaries, inheritance, family pressure, and the danger of letting someone else rewrite the truth simply because they are louder, more confident, or more entitled. Ryan believed that if he moved fast enough, looked convincing enough, and used the word family enough times, Emily would eventually feel guilty and give in. And that is something many people experience in real life. Sometimes the people closest to us use love as leverage. They ask for understanding when what they really want is permission. They ask for forgiveness before they have even admitted what they did. But Emily's strength came from one simple thing. She did not panic herself into silence. She documented, she asked for help, she trusted the evidence, and most importantly, she remembered what her grandfather had taught her. Generosity is not the same as ownership. This story also reminds us that truth matters even when people try to bury it under emotion. Ryan had explanations. He had excuses. He had a family narrative ready to use against her. But the truth did not need to argue. It only needed to be seen clearly. In the end, the cameras did more than protect a property. They protected a promise. And maybe the biggest lesson is this: real family does not need you to erase yourself in order to keep the peace. Real love does not ask you to surrender your rights, your memories, or your future just so someone else can avoid accountability. Sometimes protecting what was left to you is not selfish. Sometimes it is the final act of honoring the person who trusted you with it.